War is coming. Make no mistake about it. We have never been closer to open conflict with the Chinese in my lifetime than we are right now. Those strange flashes that we saw over the southern United States that got picked up in infrared imagery, those were laser tests. That's why they occurred over military bases in controlled airspace. We've seen strange crashes that can't be explained with high-ranking U.S. military personnel aboard. I believe the soft war has already started. But after the election, things are going to break loose. It was announced only a few hours ago. The Chinese are sanctioning Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Raytheon, the suppliers of laser technology to the U.S. military. I don't think this is a coincidence. I think they know. I think they've realized that we are supplying Taiwan with the ability to knock down their missiles from either space or ground-based weapons. There was a deal cut earlier this year that actually supplied 150 or so ground attack rockets to the Taiwanese. Now, why would we do that? Why would we need to do that? If we were attempting to reestablish favorable relations with the Chinese, that would seem like it would be suicide. Why would the Navy do this? Navy to add laser weapons to at least 7 more ships in the next 3 years. This is from July of this year. We are ramping up directed energy weapons on our military vessels. I think this puts the issue with the McCain and the Fitzgerald in an entirely different light. Very strange that all occurred spring, summer 2017, while North Korea was launching missile after missile after missile. Heck, they even exploded a nuclear weapon underground. And then these things happened with those 2 ships. And then all of a sudden, it just stopped. The Navy said it had a fleet-wide training problem that was going to take years to fix. After the McCain, that was the end. I think we can see now clearly what was going on. This is the article that I was speaking of earlier. China to impose sanctions, there we go, on U.S. arms suppliers to Taiwan. Chinese-U.S. relations have plunged to their lowest level in decades amid disputes about security, technology, the pandemic, and human rights. Beijing. China's government said Monday it will impose sanctions on U.S. military contractors, including Boeing Company's defense unit and Lockheed Martin Corporation, for supplying weapons to rival Taiwan, stepping up a feud with Washington over security and Beijing's strategic ambitions. Raytheon Technologies Corporation and relevant American individuals associated with the sales also will be affected, said Zhao Lijian. He gave no details of what penalties might be imposed or when. Now, the issue with Taiwan and China, is complicated and goes back 70 years or more. But, as you can see, Boeing and Lockheed Martin are losing ground on this. It's very, very strange to see this going on and almost no discussion whatsoever of what's happening in South America and how they could be tied together. For those of you who are unaware, last year, the U.S. failed in its attempt to overthrow Venezuela, but was wildly successful in their coup attempt in Bolivia. They were able to infiltrate the military and forced Evo Morales to leave. Now, strangely enough, they put somebody in power who was a porn star, Janine Áñez, and said, okay, now you can have elections. Now that Morales is out of the country, Morales' party won a landslide. This guy was the finance minister for Evo Morales. Said he would do everything just as Evo Morales did it. And in a free and fair and open election, he won. Now DC is caught. You see, they've cooked up this story about quote-unquote socialism, hoping the American people won't understand the difference between socialism that requires you to get up and go to work for a living and then take care of your neighbors, and Washington, D.C. corporate socialism that says we need the corporations, we need big business, we just need to demonize them every 4 years, and we need to overtax them so that we can stay in power. And there is a difference, and it's gotten so bad that they've had to create and cook up another metric called the depletion rate for Venezuela's oil. Now, it's a very complicated metric. They have had to convolute numbers in a way that most Americans could not understand. And it took me about a week or so to figure out how to explain this the right way. What they're saying is this, that Venezuela's reserves of oil, the largest in the world, are now essentially worthless. Why? Because Venezuela's depletion rate has gotten so low. And this is what they talk about right here. Talking about the mismanagement, PDVSA, all this kind of stuff. Now, here's where they start with this new metric that they're going to be running out. You're going to see in a lot of different articles. PDVSA, that's the state-run oil company that controls the sale of oil in Venezuela. And for those of you who think that's a bad idea, Russia has one, Saudi Arabia has Aramco, Brazil has one, Mexico has one, Ecuador has one. Every major oil producer in the world, other than the United States, has a company, a corporation that they've set up to pump the oil out of the ground, put it on the open market, sell it, bring it back, and use it to finance the government. That's all around the world. Many countries wildly successful. But let me read this for you to try to explain this convoluted new idea they have. PDVSA's decreased output is not due to dwindling oil reserves, but instead due to a reduction in its depletion rate. The depletion rate, the rate at which oil companies are depleting their proven reserves, provides the key to understanding the economics of an oil company and the value of its reserves. Venezuela's depletion rate has been falling rapidly since 2007. In 2019, it sat at 0.121% per year, indicating that it would take 569.41 years for PDVSA to tap half of its reserves. So that's what the rate is, this number. How long will it take any country or any corporation to tap half of its known reserves? Exxon's depletion rate is 6.53% per year, meaning that it would take 10.25 years for Exxon's reserves to be halfway depleted. Now, what they're saying is this. They're saying that because they believe a barrel of oil today, pumped out of the ground, is worth more than a barrel of oil pumped out of the ground tomorrow, the farther out it takes you to pump all the oil, the less the oil is worth. Now, that only is true if the price stays the same. But the price, what do we know about the price? It doesn't stay the same. Now let me use an example, and this will make it very clear for you what's going on. Imagine you have a loaf of bread, and I am starving, and I want to buy some of your bread. Now you have the ability to make bread, and you want to charge me a price that you can not only replace the bread you sold me, but you can also have enough bread for you and all of your other customers as well. So you're going to have to charge me an increased rate, far more than what it cost to make the bread. So what if I told you, you know what? I'm going to pay you whatever you want for your bread, but you have to agree to sell me a certain percentage of all the bread you make. And if you don't, I won't. Well, you'd have to think about, well, gosh, that's kind of a bad deal for me as a bread maker, isn't it? What about all my other customers? You see, you as a bread maker are not making bread to make sure that everyone in the world gets fed. You're making bread to take care of your own self-interest, not mine. If I'm starving or I don't have enough bread, that's not your problem. You see, this is the idea that OPEC had. What they were able to do is take the price of oil and manipulate it in a way that not only took care of the reserves and made sure they didn't deplete too quick, but also kept the price of oil someplace where most countries could afford it. Now, this was actually bad for a lot of oil-producing countries. A certain few did all right because they were in bed with the United States. Think of a normal loaf of bread, and you have it for sale. Now I come to you and say, I would like to buy that loaf of bread, but then you turn around to me and say, tell you what, I'll sell you a slice, and this is how much a slice is. Come back tomorrow if you want more. So depending on sales, depending on how many people buy slices of bread, that price is going to do what? It's going to go up and up and up and up until you get to the point where the market can bear the price. Where people will say, okay, no more. That's it. That's too much. I'm going to try to find some other thing to eat. I'm going to go learn to fish and eat fish, or I'm going to go pick fruit off fruit trees and I'm going to eat that, but I'm not going to pay that price for your bread. Especially if I can't buy a loaf of it at a time, if I can only buy one slice at a time. You see, this is what Chavez did to piss off the United States. He said, you know what? We're going to stop production at this level of oil. We're not going to allow you to tell us how much oil we have to produce to keep oil cheap for North America. This is what really pissed off DC and Big Oil. He said, okay, we're going to cut off the supply at this amount, and that's going to drive the price up. And we're going to see how much Washington, D.C. you're willing to pay. Just like any other business would have done. This is what businesses do every day. They charge what the market will bear. Why would you charge less if you think you can get more? Another great example, the PlayStation 5. They're going to jack up the price, to the sky because of the shortage of these things. And I think they created the shortage. Sony did this purposefully. Those of you who aren't aware, there's a big run-up to buying the new PlayStation that's coming out. And then all of a sudden there was a problem and a hiccup about delivery day, and they're not going to have enough units. And the people who have units are going to put them on eBay, and they're going to charge massive amounts of money. And they're going to get top dollar. That's what this is really about. So what they're saying back here in these articles, talking about the end of Venezuela's oil era, these articles that were primarily paid for by Big Oil, is that somehow it's bad for an oil company or an oil nation to set its own price and to set its own rate of depletion. This is capitalism 101. And they're trying to confuse Americans, saying, oh, this is socialism. Socialism would say that, well, okay, it's really the best idea that we charge as little as we possibly can for the oil and oil products and petroleum, because really we're in business to make life good for everyone. That's not why they're in business. That's not why they sell oil. They sell oil in their own interest. Would you work against your own self-interest? Would you take part in any kind of an activity that would cause how much you get paid for what you do to go down? Or what you have to go down? Would you take part in that? Of course you wouldn't. You absolutely would not do that. Why should Venezuela? This is why DC attacked. This is why Big Oil colluded with the Saudis and other powers around the world, including Washington, D.C., to take this country out. Because it was working in its best interest, its own best interest, not the best interest of the world, not the best interest of Russia, not the best interest of their suppliers. They were working in their own best interest. And that's why we saw when Chavez took power, the price of oil go up and up and up and up. And DC kept saying, you need to pump more oil, you need to pump more oil. And they didn't. And pumping the same amount of oil, they were making more and more and more and more money every year. That's why DC had to cook up the plan to destroy their currency, to sanction them, to threaten anybody who would sell them anything. That's why the rig counts are down, because they can't buy parts because of DC. So anyway, make no mistake, DC's chickens are about to come home to roost in a lot of ways. And it doesn't really matter who's in charge at this point with these topics. So pray for each other, lift each other up, keep your eyes open, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.